6 people have been killed and dozens injured after Russia launched a barrage of missiles at Ukraine, hitting its 2 biggest cities. At least 20 people were hurt in the capital, Kyiv, while several people were killed in Kharkiv, where dozens of residential buildings were damaged, including a block of flats which partly collapsed, trapping people under the rubble.
Russia and Ukraine are blaming each other after the apparent downing of a plane that Russia says was carrying dozens of Ukrainian prisoners of war who were supposed to be released today in a prisoner exchange.
This cell phone video captured the moment the Russian military plane fell from the sky. "Good God," she screams. On the ground, the snow-covered wreckage is spread across a field in the western Belgorod region. Moscow has accused Ukrainian forces of shooting the plane down, killing all on board, including Ukrainian soldiers who were to be released as part of a prisoner exchange. There were 6 crew members on board and 65 Ukrainian servicemen for exchange, he says. All the crew and passengers have died. CBS News cannot independently verify who was on board or what caused the plane to crash, but a spokesperson for Ukrainian military intelligence did say a prisoner exchange had been planned for today. The issue of POWs is deeply sensitive for both countries. Since the start of the war nearly 2 years ago, both sides have carried out 49 prisoner exchanges, with Kyiv saying more than 8,000 Ukrainians remain behind bars in Russia, including civilians. Ukraine's military still hasn't directly addressed the Kremlin's claims or the crash itself, instead calling out Russian missile attacks in the eastern city of Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest, and the capital Kyiv, that have killed 18 people and injured more than 130 over the past 24 hours.
The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists say the major factors for the clock's positioning include the ongoing wars in Ukraine and Gaza, climate change, and even advancements in artificial intelligence.
Trends continue to point ominously towards global catastrophe.
The war in Ukraine, expanding conflict in the Mideast, and saber-rattling from North Korea, just some of the many security threats facing world leaders in 2024. Those threats prompting the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists to keep their doomsday clock set as close to annihilation as ever before. Just 90 seconds to midnight, the theoretical point of global destruction.
We once again set the doomsday clock to express a continuing and unprecedented level of risk.
The scientists created the doomsday clock back in 1947, reflecting nuclear tensions during the early days of the Cold War. Since then, it's been updated every year to warn society how close it's coming to destroying the world. This year, the group cited several ominous new trends, including the first expansion of the U.S. nuclear arsenal in decades, to keep pace with similar expansions in China and Russia.
In many ways, we're setting ourselves up for a three-way arms race, which is unprecedented and quite concerning. So the picture is quite bleak.
Now let's turn to Canada's western border, as Russian President Vladimir Putin has allegedly done. The rumor mills are ablaze. Putin is apparently eyeing his next prize. This time he's supposedly going for an old Russian outpost, the U.S. state of Alaska. Yes, the rumors are that Putin wants Alaska back. Alaska was once a part of the Russian Empire, but Moscow sold the land back in 1867 to the still fledgling country called the United States of America. This was before the Great Rivalry, before the Cold War, before the modern hostilities, and before anything of value had ever been discovered in Alaska. Russia had sold a frozen wasteland to the US for the then princely sum of $7.2 million. But now reports say that Putin is unhappy and that he's declared the sale of Alaska, quote-unquote, illegal. But this is not true. It's an absurd rumor spread to either incite fear or just grab eyeballs. Either way, there's no truth to it. So why did these rumors begin? Because of a law that Putin signed a few days ago. He signed a decree on the 18th of January. Putin allocated some funds to Russia's Department of Foreign Property. These are to help find, register, and give legal protection to Russian property abroad. It's basically about protecting Russian assets, some of which are being held hostage by foreign governments. And this has been the case since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. So Putin's order is not really unusual. The Alaska rumors began because of the language of this decree. It mentioned protecting Russian property, including the property of the Soviet Union and the Russian Empire. The Soviet Union fell in December 1991. The Russian Empire lasted between 1721 and 1917. So someone thought Putin wants to claim everything that Russia ever owned, from the 1700s till today. And that would include Alaska.
Well, I think I speak for all of us in the U.S. government to say that certainly he is not getting it back.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has raised eyebrows by declaring the 1867 sale of Alaska to America as illegal, firmly asserting Russia's claim over the Northern Territory. However, the U.S. State Department has swiftly responded, with the deputy spokesperson Mr. Vedant Patel stating unequivocally that Putin is certainly not getting it back.
Again, move to Russia if I may. Putin apparently today signed an order declaring a 1983 sale of Alaska to the United States as illegitimate, quote unquote. Do you have a response to that?
To me, just understand that he signed something today that said the sale of Alaska is illegitimate.
Right.
Well, I think I speak for all of us in the U.S. government to say that certainly he is not getting it back.
Are you seeking for Secretary Seward as well?
Let's take a trip back to 1867 when the purchase of Alaska marked a significant moment in history. This transaction symbolized the conclusion of Russian efforts to extend trade and settlements to North America's Pacific coast. The formal transfer of Alaska to the United States took place on October 18, 1867, for the sum of $7.2 million at that time. The 1867 deal remains a pivotal milestone in the United States' ascent as a major power in the Asia-Pacific region.
Bloomberg reported on Thursday local time that Russia had sent signals to the U.S. through indirect channels, indicating President Vladimir Putin's willingness to enter discussions to end the war in Ukraine. The report said these signals were sent to U.S. senior officials last month, according to two sources close to the Kremlin. However, officials in Washington have denied receiving any back-channel signals or messages from Moscow. Bloomberg also said that in return for negotiations, Russia would want to maintain control over the roughly 18% of Ukrainian territory that it had captured since its invasion began in February 2022.
Lawmakers are pressing to secure a region that's often overlooked, the Arctic.
That's right. National security correspondent Caitlin Berg has a look at why some of America's most remote territory remains vital to homeland security.
With the Alaska Purchase in 1867, the U.S. became one of 8 countries with territory above the Arctic Circle. Russia has the largest presence, and as its alliance with China strengthens, so does Beijing's influence.
We are in a new era of authoritarian aggression led by the dictators Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. They are running hostile regimes that seek to control access to the Arctic region.
In the summer of 2022, China and Russia deployed their first joint naval task force of 7 ships into Alaska's waters. It happened again last summer with 11 ships.
This is a sign of things to come. We not only need more Coast Guard assets, but also a Navy presence back in Alaska. We will need to be able to respond more rapidly in the future to these kind of incursions.
With sea ice receding, experts warn Arctic routes are more accessible than ever, and U.S. adversaries have built up Arctic capabilities and military facilities, leaving America in their wake.
The U.S. is very poorly positioned in order to defend its own sovereignty in the region versus the Russians, which have invested heavily over the past couple decades in basically trying to militarize the region.
The U.S. currently has only one operational polar icebreaker ship,
which is uniquely designed to navigate the Arctic waters. Russia's fleet has more than 50, and the Chinese are on pace to surpass the U.S. by 2025. Under pressure to keep up, the Coast Guard wants 8 to 9 more icebreakers in the region.
We need your continued support to build out our polar security cutters and rapidly accelerate us into the future where we can have greater capacity for icebreakers.
Lawmakers consider securing the Arctic an urgent critical need, and this year have authorized roughly $168 million for military construction and equipment. With the nation's first deep water port underway in Nome, Alaska, the goal is for there to be the infrastructure to handle these icebreakers and Navy destroyers by the end of the decade.